Welcome to Village Church Connections. I'm David Pavey. An anonymous source recently leaked a treasure trove of confidential documents known as the Panama Papers, showing the myriad ways in which the rich and famous of this world sometimes use secretive offshore accounts to hide their money from public scrutiny. The Panama Papers comprise 11.5 million files from the database of the world's fourth largest offshore law firm, Mossack Fonseca. It's the biggest leak in history, dwarfing the data released by the WikiLeaks organization in 2010. For context, if the amount of data released by WikiLeaks was equivalent to the population of San Francisco, the amount of data released in the Panama Papers is the equivalent to that of India. And this firm is only one of thousands in the world. The papers reveal that 12 national leaders from around the world are among 143 politicians, their families, and their close associates who have been using offshore tax havens. In all, the details of 214,000 entities, including companies, trusts, and foundations, were leaked. It will take a long time for the authorities to sift through the documents and take action. Now, that's not to say that all offshore financial dealings are corrupt. They are not. But for some of these wealthy and famous people implicated in the Panama Papers leak, the goal seems to have been to avoid paying appropriate taxes. Laws are like spiders' webs, observed the French novelist Balzac. The big flies pass through, while the little flies get stuck. And to present oneself as a moral example, while secretly espousing an immoral practice, is at the very least hypocritical. Jesus himself had a lot to say about hypocrites in the Gospels. And he was addressing religious people, not the so-called publicans and sinners. So we shouldn't be too quick to concede that his teaching could not apply to us. Check Matthew 23, for example. Here's a short section from the New Living Translation. I quote, "What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb gardens, but you ignore the more important aspects of the law, justice, mercy, and faith. You should tithe, yes, but do not neglect the more important things. Blind guides, you strain your water so you won't accidentally swallow a gnat, but you swallow a camel. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! For you're like whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, but filled on the inside with dead people's bones and all sorts of impurity. Outwardly you look like righteous people, but inwardly your hearts are filled with hypocrisy and lawlessness." And that's only part of the monologue. Then there's a very scary story about hypocrisy in the first century church, recorded in the Acts of the Apostles. It goes like this, I quote, "There was a certain man named Ananias, who with his wife Sapphira sold some property. He brought part of the money to the apostles while claiming it was the full amount, and with his wife's consent he kept the rest. Then Peter said, 'Ananias, why have you let Satan fill your heart? You lied to the Holy Spirit, and you kept some of the money for yourself. The property was yours to sell or not sell as you wished, and after selling it, the money was also yours to give away. How could you do a thing like this? You weren't lying to us, you were lying to God.' As soon as Ananias heard these words, he fell to the floor and died. Everyone who heard about it was terrified. Then some young men got up, wrapped him in a sheet, took him out, and buried him. Now, about 3 hours later, his wife came in, not knowing what had happened. Peter asked her, "Was this the price you and your husband received for your land?" "Oh, yes," she replied, "that was the price." And Peter said, "How could the two of you even think of conspiring to test the Spirit of the Lord like this? The young men who buried your husband are just outside the door, and they'll carry you out too." Instantly she fell to the floor and died. And when the young men came in and saw that she was dead, they carried her out and buried her beside her husband. Great fear gripped the entire church and everyone else who heard what had happened. With God, there is no offshore accounting. To quote the letter to the Hebrews in the Bible, nothing in all creation is hidden from God. Everything is naked and exposed before his eyes, and he is the one to whom we are accountable. We may succeed in hiding things from each other, but with God there are no secrets. Salvation, freedom, and life come not through keeping our offshore accounts of sin secret, but through confessing them to God, who knows about them already, and is waiting for us to come clean, and then to forgive us. That restores our relationship with our Creator, engenders peace within ourselves, and enables reconciliation with other people. Yes, the Panama Papers leak regarding offshore tax havens will spell trouble for some hypocrites. But let them be a reminder to us that we need to come clean with God. When we are open and honest with Him, there's nothing left to haunt us. We're invited out of hiding, free to reveal our hearts, and the only debt that is left outstanding is a continuing debt to love God and love one another. Now, thank you for tuning in once again to Village Church Connections.